could rise and say the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Should we move everything up or do the minutes?
We can do the minutes real quick.
Okay, we are going to vary the schedule just a little bit. I know there's a large group here for the solid waste advisory proposal presentation, so I want to get you folks on as quickly as possible. And if you choose to stay for the rest of the meeting, that's fine. If not, you can enjoy the beautiful afternoon out there. So I'm going to suggest that we move item 4.0, we'll make that after the staff report. Make that 8.2. Okay, so 5.0, we'll do the minutes. The minutes for 2 meetings were included in your packet. The regular meeting of May 20th and the public meeting on May 28th regarding the budget. Do you want to take both at the same time?
Sure.
Okay. Any comments, corrections? If not, do I have a motion
I move.
to approve? Motion by Lou, second by Bill. All in favor? All right, thank you. Other adjustments to the agenda, Patrick?
Just the one request for a leave of absence that's on your table here tonight. So it would go under new business someplace.
Okay, so everyone should have a request from Ashley London for a leave of absence. Let's make that item 13.1D. Anything else? No? Okay. So we have our, I guess we'll include this too. We have our first public session, 7.0, and this is an opportunity for anyone who has a question or comment to address the board on an item that's on the agenda. If anyone does, they can come forward and use the podium and the mic. If not, okay, thanks. So item 8.0, staff report, and we have, like I said, a large group here on the solid waste advisory proposal, and it's Fisher Mitchell 5th grade. You must be, the entire 5th grade must be here, close to it. So who takes the lead on this?
Is it Taylor and Max? You guys can come right up to the mic here. And we want to thank you all for being here tonight and look forward to your presentation.
Hello, I'm Taylor Tate.
And I'm Maxwell Riccadoni.
And here with us today are our classmates, Alden, Frida, Lyra, Bobby, and Zeke, and FMS graduate Declan, who is a leader on this issue as well. We are here to request the school board create an ad hoc committee to look at the issue of solid waste in our school district. As a part of library class at Fisher Mitchell, we got to pick a problem in our community. We researched it and tried to help solve it. We focused on the dangers of single-use plastic. Our request here tonight is a direct result of that project.
At FMS, we did 2 things. One was to replace our plastic utensils with silverware, thanks to the support of Mr. Tim Harkins and Miss Melissa. Starting next year, we will no longer use plastic utensils at FMS. Thanks to over 30,000 meals a year. That will be a big win. Goodbye, sporks.
The second thing we did was try to encourage more recycling at lunch. This was harder. Students know recycling is the right thing to do, but habits are hard to break. What we'd like to do now, with your help, is something more, to look at the big picture and make some important changes. We want all our students and schools to have a way to work together on this issue. If we are going to succeed, we need to do it together, all of us.
Why do we kids care so much? First, we are all role models and have little brothers and sisters who are watching us literally right now. Our parents and teachers are watching us too. The values we practice in school will go everywhere. Will go everywhere we do, home, downtown, the playing fields, the social businesses, to Popham Beach and Sewell Pond. They will become lifelong habits not only for us but for all those around us, including you.
Second, a healthy environment is critical to our community's overall health. Let's start with a healthy economy. Our parents' jobs and ours in a few short years won't be here unless Mid-Coast Maine is a healthy, flourishing, beautiful place. That won't be handed to us. We have to make it happen. We also want to eat from and swim in healthy waterways. We want a landfill that looks less like a dump and more like a beautiful meadow. We want classmates, friends, and neighbors who are thoughtful, caring, and who know the easy way isn't always the best way. So, we are asking the school board to create an ad hoc committee, a solid waste advisory group. Yes, SWAG, SWAG, to look at how solid waste is currently being produced and disposed of at our schools. We would like to study what we are doing now, look at alternatives and costs, and at the end, make recommendations before the next school budget.
The recommendations will probably include costs such as materials, services, and things like an education program to teach people how to adopt new habits. We understand that startup will cost money, but we believe it will save money in the long run and possibly save our town, state, or country, or world. We know and you know there are kids like us all over the world who want to help our environment. We hope to do it with you. Together we put the 1 in RSU1, and so that none of us ever have to use a spork again.
That's great.
Thank you. Why don't you just stay up there for a minute just to answer any questions? You know that this is a proposal. You'd like to see the committee focused on all school buildings or just Fisher Mitchell?
We want them to focus on all school buildings.
Okay. And when you say waste-free, you're really talking about a waste stream going into the landfill. I mean, there's going to be waste, but recycling is your goal, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It's interesting. Oh, I'm sorry.
And composting.
And composting. Okay. It is interesting. I mean, the RSU does not have a recycling plant district-wide. I mean, we function building by building, and I know Bath Middle School, for example, does garbage to gardens. But as far as from a district-wide perspective, we really don't have a recycling plan. So I think your idea helps us address that. I think that's a shortcoming for us, and I'm very pleased and excited that you brought this idea to the board.
Thank you.
Yep.
It's a great presentation, by the way. Good job.
Thank you.
I'm just curious, how did it start? How did you go, I mean, obviously you have something against sporks, and I agree, but what did it, what really got you going that got this snowball rolling to this?
Well, in library class this year, we all focused on a problem, and we did something in our community to pretty much help it and fix it. But like, really, before that even happened, my dad was really big on this and recycling and whatnot. So I pretty much learned it from him.
That's great. And then you got everybody else involved. That's awesome. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
Any comments? Bill?
I just want to thank you and your classmates and your teacher, and Mr. Berkowitz, I'm sure, was involved in the planning. It's great to see our students assuming a leadership role in a very positive cause. And I wish all the luck will work with you. I'm sure the board is very pleased with your ideas, and we'll get that thing going, and hopefully we can reduce the amount in the landfill. Ms. M.R.S.A will be very pleased with that too. Okay.
Thanks. Any other comments, questions? No? Did you, I mean, as a result of this activity, did you produce a written report on any findings that you did? No?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Well, for example, you talk about comparing, obviously you did a lot of research, looking at places, at those areas where the district produces waste, and you also did some research on alternatives to using the landfill for that waste stream, to absorb that waste stream. And I just wonder if you, in doing that research and doing that work, if any of it was part of a written report from the class or from any of you individually.
No, not really. What we're using this research to just, get it out there and spread so people know about it and so we can help.
Okay. Did you have?
Well, most of it we just looked up on a computer and remembered it and stuff. We used a lot of computers this year. So.
Yeah. That's good. Okay. Yep. Mary?
My name is Mary Iosco. My son is part of this group. And I was invited to come in to talk to this group, and they were telling me they wanted to know about plastic. And what I discovered is they knew everything about plastic. But what they really wanted was some change. So I worked with them because I've done some committee work in my life, to come up with some of these things. And so some of this proposal is really based on what the city has done over a number of years. And the city, the SWAG came because we have a solid waste advisory council or committee, SWAC. And so the city's been doing a lot of this research for a long time, and that committee is very excited about being a partner with this type of committee to help with what we've learned as a city and help the school transition into some of the things that we're doing, because the city also needs to be looking beyond what we have already accomplished. So for that teamwork to continue on and to have the students involved and getting them, if we were able to do this at a district-wide level, these kids who are coming into kindergarten, while there's going to be a learning curve, this is something that's going to become a habit for them right away, and hopefully something that they can take home and teach their families how to do it. So that is a great symbiotic relationship between the city and the schools to try to make that a little bit more holistic for our entire community.
Yeah.
That's some little background on that. You definitely have a lot of support on the city side, and you can see some of our committee members here as well.
Oh, that's great. I mean, it's been said in the context of climate change discussions and et cetera, that you are the folks that are going to inherit the world, and in this case, inherit the landfill when it's full. And I think it is very appropriate and timely that, and it's very encouraging to see young folks step forward to have the mindfulness to kind of take a hold of an issue that really has eluded us adults quite clearly over the last many decades, and to look for some positive solutions to a problem that we all confront. So that's great. That's great. I don't know if the board is comfortable taking this on as an action item for tonight, to add to the agenda, to set up a committee, to form an ad hoc committee to look at this issue, or whether you want to wait till the fall to take action.
And take action now. I'd move to form one. I mean, we have to decide. I mean, I guess we don't have to necessarily decide if there's which board member it would be, or board members.
No,
but
I think
we can
it just
announce,
puts
I
us, right, it puts us out
establish.
there as a goal for us to continue to work with the communities and with students on this issue, so. Yeah. Well, no motion yet, we're just kind of.
I'll move that we form the ad hoc committee to explore the solid waste.
Well, let's put it off, let's put that as a new,
You want to do it under
new
the
business agenda, is that all right, Patrick? Are you okay? Yep.
I mean, we can do it while they're here.
You can do it now.
Okay, we'll do it while you're here, so you'll
I don't want them to have
see
to
the
do it.
culmination of it.
Yeah.
Um,
So I would move that we form a solid waste committee, ad hoc committee, and we can, once it's established, we can work on the details of, who's on it.
Okay, is there a second? Motion by Lou, second by Bill. All in favor? Okay, any opposed? No? Okay, I guess we're with you, so.
We're with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Make sure you leave your names at the front door now, because you're likely to be on this committee.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, if folks want to leave at this point, then we'll hold off before we continue, so, thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, so we're going to go back now to item 4.0, recognition and comments from the chair. And I just want to first thank the community for the support that the district received in the budget referendum vote. It was overwhelmingly approved by all our communities. And I do want to thank the public for that show of support. That said, the turnout, I think everyone should acknowledge, was pretty low. I think, and I'm not sure it was Bath. I think we had fewer than 2% of eligible voters participating in Bath, and the participation was equally low in the other communities. It was equally low in districts, in our neighboring districts. I mean, it's not a unique phenomena to the RSU, but it is something that I think we experience from time to time when there aren't any real incendiary issues on the ballot, I suppose. My comments are essentially, first, I do want to make sure that I'm very clear. I do thank the public for its support, and I think the board joins me in that. But the segue here is to comments that reflect on what we should do or what we might think about as a board to improve the public's opportunity to participate in the budget process. the state law clearly provides for the district budget meeting, and the option, whether we do a budget referendum is an optional thing, although voters in the RSU, again, supported to continue that practice to have a dual validation of the budget. I have circulated to the board, some ideas that I hope would encourage and facilitate public participation and input into our budget process. The budget process, and I guess most people don't clearly understand that, and we'll take, or I'll take responsibility, but I think the board has responsibility for that. The process extends about 5 months. You know, it starts in January. A lot of it is initially Patrick working with the ad team to come up with a set of priorities and recommendations to advance to the board. But the budget does go public for 2 or 3 months, both in the context of discussion at our regular board meetings, and then there are public hearings that are specifically focused on the budget. And again, I think in my experience on the board, 8 years, we don't get a lot of participation during those meetings. We don't get a lot of input and feedback from the public concerning the detail of the budget, what's in there, what's good, what's missing, and what we should be considering. So my thoughts are, again, were to look for ways to facilitate that participation, those opportunities for participation. And I listed, I've given thought to 4. I'm suggesting perhaps that we change our finance committee meetings on the budget to the afternoons, when people might have a better opportunity to participate. We do a regular rotation of meetings to other school buildings. We usually start that rotation in the fall and carry it through January. We do that because of weather. It's more predictable to take the trip down to Phippsburg in September than it is in February. But they plow the roads. But my suggestion is that perhaps we start our meetings at Bath Middle School, which seems to be our home base, and then during the budget process, we take those meetings to the outlying school buildings. And the purpose for that would be to give us an opportunity to raise and discuss budget items that are specifically relevant to those buildings while we're down. We'll use Phippsburg as an example. So we'll talk about things as they apply to Phippsburg down in the Phippsburg meeting. A third idea is to do a very high-profile district-wide budget meeting with outreach to the PTAs and to town officials. I mean, I hear that criticism from town officials at times. They don't fully appreciate what's in the budget. But do a high-profile meeting with those folks, and the community at large, of course, is more than willing to participate. But get some real good publicity behind it and notice behind it, and take a detailed presentation of the budget out to the PTAs, to the town officials. I don't think we have the time to do each community separately or each PTA separately, but we can bring them all together, I think, and do that meeting. And then with the annual budget, I would ask that Patrick provide a multi-year perspective on spending priorities. So we have a sense of knowing what, not only knowing we'll know what's in this year's budget, but we might get a sense of what priorities are for the successive years. It's not a guarantee that we're going to be funding any of those items, but at least gives folks an idea of what we're thinking as we go forward. None of this may work. We may not get increased participation from the public, but it's something that I'd like the board to think about, and I'm not asking this to be an action item at this point, but give some thought to it over the summer, and when we come back in the fall, we can try to finalize a process. I fully appreciate the fact that the district budget meeting is an opportunity for individuals in the communities to bring issues up and to vote on them in a town hall fashion and to secure a decision, an up or down decision, or a decision, as in the case of this latest instance, to amend the budget to add some money for another purpose. I fully appreciate that is it's in statute. It's a good idea, and it works. It allows people to give that input and to participate. But for me, anyways, I balance that against the observation that I find that I think of the budget process as a rational and a determinative process of balancing priorities and needs, and it's not a process of coming up with additional things at the last minute that we can add without looking at how that fits in a totality. So it is the way we do school budgets in Maine. I understand that. From my perspective, it's not the best way to do school budgets in Maine. The better way for me would be to have folks bring those thoughts and concerns to the board in a timely fashion, so that we can consider them as we finalize the budget, and to balance different elements of the budget against those. So anyways, those are kind of my thoughts. I know that's been a lengthy, it's kind of like I saved up all the time that I didn't spend on making comments earlier in the year to make these comments, but I did want to lay that out. There's a kind of a corollary to this, which is that I would like to suggest that we add some meetings to our agenda, some workshops to our agenda to pick specific projects or specific topics as we go forward, and perhaps conduct a workshop type meeting in addition to our business meeting on a monthly basis. I know that's additional meetings for us, but again, it would enable us to engage the public in conversation and discussion on specific topics, and rather than just sit here sometimes and not have that format or forum when we can actually discuss things with the public. I think that's about it for me. I hope you'll give some thought to this, and again, it's something that I hope people feel important to revisit in the fall when we set out our agenda. So, okay, thank you. I'm not sure anyone has a rebuttal. I'll give you. It'd be off our protocol, but if anyone has any comments or
Thanks for sharing.
Okay. And sorry for the amount of time I put into that, but okay. Item 9.0, committee reports. Patrick. Oh wait. Let's see. What is? Oh, that's recycling. What is that?
Yeah. That's you. That was your piece you moved down.
Yeah, okay. I wrote a comment on my my sheet, and I can't read it already, but, okay, go ahead, Patrick.
High
9.0.
school building project update. First steel delivery was supposed to be today. As of this afternoon, I did not see a delivery, but again, it was supposed to be today, so it could have come this afternoon. The crane is in position. If you drive down Congress, you can see the crane. It's in position for that first steel delivery. A geothermal system, it's been pressure tested, it performed, it passed, which is good news, and now the entire field has been covered over. We are going to take a break for the month of July for building committee. We will not meet. We'll pick back up in August. And some work that will need to be done this summer, and starting in the fall as well, is that the building committee will have to weigh in on the front entrance sign that we will get probably 3 to 5 different renderings. This is the big sign that will go on Congress Street to the main entrance to the building. And the canopy that's being worked on right now, as well as the furniture and colors. And those will come more in the fall, working with the staff. But we will have companies here. They'll bring the furniture into different rooms at the current high school so that students and staff can try out different furniture before we go out to bid on the project. And of course, we'll keep the building committee and the board up to date on our progress. So, any questions you have?
Any questions of Patrick? No? I just do want to say if, because it happened to me today, I was just having a conversation with someone out on the street, so to speak, and they gave me wildly different opinions on where the status of our building project. I mean, they had heard that it was reportedly delayed by as much as a year, for example. And if if you're privy to any of those conversations where you think folks don't have correct information or the information that Patrick provides on status, just to let Patrick know, and maybe there's although I think we've communicated very clearly and quite often on this project, but we want folks to at least operate under the correct understanding of where we are, what our status is. So. Okay, 9.2, late start time advisory committee. Lou?
Katie.
No, Katie.
Lou? Okay. In your board packet, there was a report from the Later Start Time Committee, which hopefully you reviewed. And essentially, I'm just going to quickly run through some of the highlights, and then Lou will jump in as needed, and we can answer any questions that you all would like. The initial purpose of this group was due to some interest from some of our communities wanting us to look into a common trend that especially some districts in southern Maine have been starting, and schools across the country, to start school times later because of the benefits to students. And so we were given the job of starting that research and looking into whether we thought this was something that the board should continue. And we also originally thought in our proposal, I'll remind you, that the work would take, this part of the work would take at least until December, January, or February of this coming year. And this was, I think, a lot of learning for all of us, that the research that is out there, as you can see under the findings and recommendations section, is pretty indisputable in terms of the benefits to academic achievement and mental and physical health for students with starting school times later, especially those in grades 6 through 12. And the recommendation actually being a start of 8:30 or later. So much so where when I, as one of the co-facilitators, was trying to find research to dispute this, like you would often do, so we could have a balanced approach to looking at this, I could find none. And so we were actually very quickly convinced as a group that the issue wasn't whether the research was there or not. It's how, if we are going to do this, the logistics and the communication piece is done if we are going to change when we start. I will add that obviously this is a very medical topic in a lot of ways, and we did have one of our nurses representing all the nurses as well as our district doctor attend, and they're very much supportive of this as well. And so we are suggesting, because we're not supposed to make an official recommendation, nothing more than, at this point, the fact that we feel like our job is done as the first sort of part of the research committee. The second part being we are supportive, actually unanimously, as a group of, you can see on the second page, all the different folks who were in attendance of these meetings, from students to community members to teachers to administrators to board, in support of further exploring this idea and what this would mean logistically for our district, and also seeing what kind of community support is out there should we choose to do this. We had a feeling that you might ask Lou and myself, well, what, and actually Anita, feel free to jump in whenever too. What time would be sort of the best time for things to start? And you can see that under the parameters, we suggest that no student start school, should we choose to make this sort of change, before 8, and that it would be better for students in 6th through 12th grade to start after 8:30. But you can also see that under the suggested action steps, there are at least sort of 6 areas that we're obviously concerned about and would need a lot of work. The next piece would be a lot more work looking into these. What does this mean for academic schedules? What does it mean for childcare, transportation, and so on and so forth? And in some of the articles we read, what we found, we actually found, people are starting to publish their process for going through these changes, because if done in a certain way or making slight adjustments, they found that they were able to get over a lot of the bigger hurdles that sort of were at the point where we're, if we do move forward, a little bit worried about. So what we're recommending in the end is that this part of the work end, and that the board decide whether they are in support of what we've done so far and would like to form the later school start time logistics and communications committee, which we feel would be the next step to address these 6 areas.
Yeah, actually, I think we don't necessarily have to reform a new committee. I mean, it can be the second phase of this committee, with some people dropping off, some people adding on. So I think what we need officially from the board tonight is a recognition of what material we've given, and if it sounds good, to just say, keep going. And what we'll do is we'll reform, reorganize, see who wants to stay on. We know some people already said, I'm done. And other people are like, I'm in for the long haul. And we can really look more carefully at what this would take logistically, how you communicate it to, obviously, the larger community. And, because that's what you really, the community needs to want it. So it's educating the community so they understand why we would be doing this, how it affects surrounding communities that we're connected with. And so that's where the detail work really gets in, but that's what we're really asking for tonight. Any other questions? Before we go, I just want to thank Katie for all our coordination and excellent organization, and for everybody on the committee who took the time to jump in. But like Katie said, it was, we were all shocked that I was sure people were going to come in and go, oh no, we can't do this. But everyone said, I don't know how we're going to do it necessarily, but we have to do it. I mean, just when you looked at the overwhelming evidence, it was really, and even what you're finding from other towns that are trying to implement it, it really does come down to, what do you do about athletics? What do you do about people's schedules and how can you modify what you need to really create the infrastructure necessary to make this happen. So, so thanks to everyone on the committee, and thank you, Katie.
So what happens to the K through 5? You say the research shows, or is it your recommendation that no one start earlier than 8, or is that what the research shows?
The reason why we chose 8 o'clock is because while, how do I say this sort of concisely? While younger kids are up earlier, we still don't want them to get to school too early. Because when you say 8 o'clock, you're actually really talking about 7 o'clock for a lot of students who might take a longer ride to school or have early morning things. So when we were backing it all up, essentially it's thinking about what time do you want those little guys to be leaving their houses, potentially for whoever the earliest one is. And so Dr. Hannah suggested that we would want to stay within the 7 to 8 range, which would mean no one starting before 8, including those in K to 5. Does that make sense?
Well, it does. So that's your recommendation. It's just that in your write-up, you talk about the research makes recommendations on adolescents 6 through 12, but you don't.
The research is very strong for older students, especially teenagers, and the impacts it has on them starting after. There isn't as much detail about the younger students and what their official.
Okay,
there's no hard start time.
Yeah, that's really the comment I was looking for.
Okay.
Okay. As a person who went to high school on split sessions, I started at 7:30 in the morning and ended at 12:30. I appreciate what the research might say about how early mornings and teenagers don't mix. I mean, there's no question of that. I think I think your charter, the charter of the committee, when we set this up a couple months ago or a few months ago now, would enable you to move to the second phase. I mean, I don't think the board needs to give specific authorization, if that's the right word, to the committee to start looking at this question on logistics.
Okay.
I do think at some point we need to get a presentation. I mean, I appreciate the recommendations of the committee, but as has been kind of the line that we hear with what's going on in Washington, the underlying evidence at some point should be shared with the board. Yep. And you do raise that as one of your suggested action steps, looking for a way to present this material and to support this recommendation in a concise and clear way to the public. And I think some of that should include some of the detail, or at least the references to the kind of research that you and the rest of the committee looked at.
That's very much the plan. I just wrote some concise questions and notes here, so it's not everything we talked about. So our community outreach would look like board presentations, including the nurses and the doctors coming and presenting, as well as least some kind of community. These are the things we suggested would happen. They're not obviously in the overview. Some sort of short and sweet pamphlet that references some of the research and potential outcomes of this and kind of addresses preventatively the most common misconceptions and concerns that come up. Surveying the community as things begin and throughout the process to make sure that we're sort of that we're getting live and accurate data along the way. And so that would actually be, I know, the columns on the sheet look sort of like equal amounts of work, but to me that's sort of one of the largest
Yeah,
pieces.
I agree with you.
Yeah,
I
and,
think,
and that obviously having some open meetings, in addition to the board, is suggested from some other places who've done it. And then additionally, in my mind, the next part of this committee would need to more often be inviting whichever outsiders are part of that piece of the decision. So for instance, we would need Bath Bus to come to the meeting related to transportation piece and when we talk about all that. And so it would need to be a much sort of wider group in many senses.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Okay.
I appreciate those
Okay.
thoughts because it seems like we're all on the same page that that's probably the most important thing. And actually when we looked into where it fell short in other places, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
It wasn't communicated well.
yeah. And we have, unfortunately, we have some models out there where a good idea, speaking for myself anyways, I think late start's a good idea, but if it's not conveyed and not supported properly, it's just not going to,
Exactly.
we're just not going to win the community over. So, so again, I come back to my initial comment. I mean, I personally think the committee, has the license it needs to go forward to this second phase. That again, in my view, that clearly, you've got the educational benefit, but it's got to be balanced with the ability to pull it off, essentially. So there are a lot of good ideas out there. They're not all possible and practical, and we may find that to be the case here. So, any other comments or discussions from the board? I thank you, Lou, and Anita, and Megan's on the committee too, and
I wasn't able to attend any meetings, but
well, yeah. And the rest of the committee members for the effort you put in, and we look forward to sharing the fruits of your work as you go forward. So, okay, thanks.
Thanks, Katie.
Okay, item 10.0 is student board representative report. There isn't. We don't have a student member. I did learn at graduation that there were 3 graduating seniors with the name Sydney. All female, and so it must have been a very popular name when our Sydney's parents decided to name her that. So I don't think I've run into the name Sydney before that, but there were 3 graduated from M.R.S.A this year. Superintendent's report, 11.0. Patrick?
Yeah, I just want to report on some end of the year things. Graduation, as Steve just referred to, I thought was very successful. Our student speakers this year had wonderful messages and were succinct but effective. And so it takes a lot of courage to get up and speak in front of a big crowd like that. Jeff DeRosa, who's a special ed teacher at the high school, received the Dr. Patricia Ames Distinguished Teacher of the Award at graduation and did a fine job speaking. More scholarship night. You saw this in the backup, but I think it's worth mentioning that we had 79 students in this class that managed to receive a scholarship that are given out by the Alumni Scholarship Fund. And that totaled by itself $248,000 that was, again, split up amongst 79 students. And you couple that with local businesses, school groups, state and national scholarships. The amount that was given to that class of 2019 was around $600,000 total. So not every community has that level of support, and I'm glad that our families and students take advantage of that. JMG closing ceremony happened on May 30th. It's always a great event. A lot of students are in that program, Jobs Remains graduates at Morse High School, and we were fortunate to have BIW management come and help give out some awards and honor students this year. So Maria Morris does a great job with that program. Starting this morning, we had our CTE Summer Bridge program with 40 students signed up, and that's incoming 9th and 10th graders from Morse and Wiscasset that will experience 2 programs over the next couple of weeks, and they will, 2-week experience, receive academic elective credit after successful completion. So the programs they can choose from are carpentry, engineering, auto body, welding, and culinary, and it all includes a STEAM hands-on component. And last thing I mentioned is our girls lacrosse team was down at Fitzpatrick Stadium this past weekend, and they received the Sportsmanship Award. And just in this past year, we had 3 other teams. We had boys soccer, football, and also boys tennis. So 4 teams in 1 year receiving the Sportsmanship Award. They represent us very well.
Thanks, Patrick. Any questions of Patrick? I think I would just support his comment. I know some of us made it to graduation, and I thought that the speakers, the 5 or 6 speakers we had at graduation this year were really almost extraordinary in my view. Very good messages, very poised, great representatives of Morse High School. Deborah. 11.2 financial report.
Okay, tonight we're looking at the month of May. And we have spent $24.6 million, 82% of our budget. Last year we had spent 81.42, so once again it's representative of the reflection of our spending. We should end with a definite positive balance this year. We had the fuel bids this week. We had 4 bidders, and our winning bid was Dennis K. Burke, came in at $2.05 per gallon. So that's less than what we had in the budget, so we'll have some savings there, which is good. We have $4 million left in the encumbered, and that will cover 7 remaining payrolls, which will all happen in June, basically, because we accrue all of our summer pays. Revenues are in at 90%, and once again, last year was 89%. So everything is on track. We've brought in more interest on our investments than in the past. We still have 2 months to bring in for tuition, but we're on target there where our projection was. David's going to start his capital improvement projects this summer. So now we're just busy closing out 1 year and getting ready for the next. The Morse High School project, the final bond is closed, all the funds are in, and we have spent $15 million out of the project, about 20%, and it's averaging about $2 million per month for expenditures at this point. And I think that I saw 2 tractor-trailer trucks this morning full of steel, so they must have arrived. That's it.
Okay. Any questions of Deborah? No? Deb, thank you very much. Okay, 12.0, old business. 12.1, follow up on concerns related to student behavior and assessment results. Patrick, is that Katie?
So a paper copy of this is coming down the tables, and if there's any left, if you want to spread them out into the audience, that's great. It's just in case people want to keep a copy of what I'm about to talk about. For those of you who were at either of the 2 PTA follow-up meetings, this is going to be old news because this is basically a reiteration of something Patrick and I shared both at the Woolwich PTA meeting as well as the Bath PTA meeting last week. But we just wanted to make sure that everybody, including the school board, who's heard most of this, but in sort of bits and pieces over the course of the year, had all this information together. And this is a sort of response to some of the concerns and questions that were asked in some of the previous meetings. So I'm just going to get started. Feel free to stop and ask questions along the way. Okay, so first of all, we'll talk about the student behavior piece, and then I'll talk about the assessment piece. So obviously, one thing that is very, very near and dear to our hearts as educators, but also probably most educators, is that students feel safe and respected in their classrooms, and that we can make sure that learning is actually happening. And so, as Steve alluded to sort of at the beginning of this meeting, sometimes it's hard in the format of our board meetings where there are public comments, but there isn't a way for us to respond to all the questions that are asked. And so I want to assure people, as does Patrick, that teachers, administrators, all of us are proactively thinking about student behavior all the time, and also reactively thinking about student behavior when it's not appropriate. And so these are some of the things over the course of the last few years that we have put into place as a response to all of us putting our heads together and trying to continue to solve this problem. And not that it is completely solved, but I feel positive that we've been chipping away and working hard at it. So the first section is on staffing. So these positions have all been added over the last few years. We have added multiple educational technician positions, and those primarily are help within a classroom, especially one-on-one with students, often with students who might struggle with behavior, some with academics as well. We've increased nursing at the elementary level. And while some of you might ask, how is nursing related to behavior? It actually very much is. It's often the nurse who ends up seeing some of the students who don't want to be in the classroom because of a lot that they have going on, which is some of the reason for their behavior. Whether it's not getting enough sleep or being homeless or not having enough to eat. These are all things that are really important for our school nursing program. They're essentially teachers and support staff, just like all the rest of us, even though they do have the medical background. We have expanded pre-K as well. Last year in the budget, we added 2 deans of student positions at the middle level to help with 2 of our larger buildings, BMS and Woolwich, to make sure our principals have enough support and students have enough attention on those issues. We've increased guidance and social work positions over the past few years at the elementary level. And in this year, to be implemented for next year, we've also added 2 interventionist positions, one behavioral and one is academic/behavioral. The first being at Dyke Newell, the second being at Fisher Mitchell. In the future, amongst many things, but that we sort of have in the works, is we have talked about when we were just reviewing how the administrative team works over the course of several months developing a budget. We also have a sort of what would we love to include this year, the following year, and the year after. And while we only added 2 interventionist positions, many others are sort of hopes on the docket for future years, as well as coaches, instructional coaches, which many districts have, that kind of help to increase teacher performance around areas where they might not be as secure, help them brainstorm different strategies. And so interventionists work with students who struggle, coaches work with teachers who want to learn more. And so that's just some of the staffing overview. Questions about staff before I move on? Okay. Programming and new initiatives. Over the course of this past year, we implemented a new student behavior screener. So every student, 3 times a year, their student essentially does an assessment on them. You know, we've all heard of the NUI assessment or, you know, the academic assessments we do throughout the year, so we know how to teach students or where their areas of concern might be. This is actually one we do on every student to find behavior flags. So that's something that's new. We've talked at different points in the board about our response to intervention or RTI system. And so we have been developing what that can look like and making sure it's consistent across all of our schools. Some RTI systems are only academic. We've made sure in building ours over the last year to implement next year, it includes behavior as well. And this also includes things like collaboration meetings, which are various points. There's usually at least 3 to 4 throughout the year where we look at the data for every single student to make sure that their needs are being met. SAT teams where teachers can bring a student name to a table if they're struggling to find a strategy that works for that person and brainstorm with the group. And then positive behavior intervention system to make sure that we're not just focusing on the negative, but trying to promote good behavior by focusing on the positive as well. We've also expanded our in-house behavior program, which will be sort of fully up and running as of next year. Right now, we've built it over the past few years, so it's just K to 8. Next year, it will also be 9 through 12. We've created a regional behavior program with nearby districts. The name of that, I'm forgetting right now. Patrick? It's in Wiscasset, thank you. Yeah, thank you. It was here on Anchor Road for a little while, and then it moved. We purchased for next year, we found a need sort of for a lack of a curriculum, I should say, for our guidance counselors who teach guidance classes every week to our pre-K to 5 students, and felt like all of our students' behavior and just emotional self-confidence would benefit from having a good social emotional curriculum. So our guidance counselors researched that this year and recommended we buy Second Step. So all of our students will be doing that next year, and principals also have the toolkit so they can implement some of the same language and activities during assemblies and such. And finally, the last thing that we're doing is Count Me In, which is an organization that helps districts decrease attendance issues. We're going to be piloting work with a consultant in 2 of our schools, Woolwich and Fisher Mitchell, for next year, because we know half the battle sometimes of behavior is if you're not consistently coming to school, when you do come to school finally, but you don't understand what's going on, that's never a recipe sometimes for good behavior. So it is all related. And then in the future, our administrative team, one of our goals for next year is actually to create a student survey first, and then to add a parent survey on culture and climate in our buildings. We do a lot of surveying of our own staff, but want to move kind of beyond that community, or to hear from everybody in our community, especially the students who are the ones sitting in front of us. And then that sort of just builds on what I just said. These are just a few ways that we have.
Can I ask you a question?
Oh, please. Do you want me to go back to the other slide?
Well, sure.
Great.
The Count Me In, I noted in Jen's report on Dyke Newell,
Yes.
that her attendance has improved. She made note of that in her May report. What and maybe we have to wait for the consultant, but you have some insights into this, I'm sure. But I mean, what is the cause for these attendance issues? Is it economic? I mean, or is it transportation? Economic in the sense that, you know, people, parents have to work, or you know, have to work and have schedules that don't support their child going to school on a regular basis?
My reason for pausing is I have my assumptions, but I don't know if they're right, so I'd prefer to wait till we have more information. if that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to make a statement and have it not be true. So I think one of the reasons why we want to work with the consultant is we have some assumptions, but we don't always know. And so they would help us identify some of those things and make a plan to improve. And when we had the presenter come to review what this work would be like, it's pretty time intensive, which is why we're only starting with 2 schools to see how it goes. But her results in the other districts where she worked have been pretty positive and significant. So I'm sure we could also have her come and answer that question, but I don't know.
Okay. So the consultant, I mean, the intent is not only to get insight into the cause of these attendance issues, but to make recommendations on...
Not only to make recommendations, but to put them into place.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's to identify the problem, make a plan to fix the problem, and then actually fix the problem. Okay. So our teacher union ran a behavior survey because they were interested in hearing from our teachers about their experience with student behavior. And so we'll be using that feedback as a starter for conversations which were had in each building to build sort of a district focus goal for next year to continue to think about this and come up with solutions as a staff around how we can continue to improve this. Another touch point where we get information about behavior to make sure that we're thinking about it all the time is our principals and directors are all surveyed twice a year, and there are questions in there. It's an anonymous SurveyMonkey survey related to behavior. You know, how quickly they follow up on an issue, what sort of discipline is carried out, and so on and so forth. And so that's all information we have. And then I know you often hear me talk about the professional development that's going on in the district, and so you yourselves have watched the ACEs presentation that Devin Galise did in Phippsburg. I believe that was earlier this year. We've been training people on a new program called Safety Care, and we've also had some professional speakers come and talk about trauma-informed discussion. And this is actually a topic in the future that our principals would like to continue some differentiated professional development on trauma-informed discussion or instruction and also classroom management. So that's in the works as well for our professional development schedule next year. Questions on this slide? Okay. So in terms of assessments, and this is information the board has seen before, sort of at a glance, at an overview, what we can say from looking at the information is by the time students reach 11th grade, most of them, if you look at the results for math, English, and science, have caught up or surpassed state expectations in reading and math. I think most impressively is Morris High School is well above the state and global average for the AP scores that students are getting. And I think when Eric was here, we talked about how many students that actually is to make sure it's not just the same sort of pot of 20 students taking all the AP classes, and found out that it's a much larger number than that. So those scores are actually hitting a large portion of our Morse population. The reading and math scores are something that we've spoken to the board about at Fisher Mitchell that need addressing. And other than that, we are at or above the state average for math, reading, and science on all tests except for BMS math and Morse science. The science part we spoke about for Bath Middle School, I'll remind you, for Morse High School, was because of the new standards, the next generation science standards that hadn't yet been adopted. So the test is an old test, but what the teachers are teaching is the new information, so they're not aligned. It's actually the same for our younger students. And then The Bath Math was because of the purchase of the new program, which hadn't been fully bought for each grade level. We talked at length about both of those things, but I just wanted to remind you why that is. In terms of how we move forward with reviewing and improving the content areas that are more troublesome, because we do need to be doing better in some of these areas. There's a clear plan that was shared with the board. That's the curriculum overview that I believe was given to you perhaps last month or the month before, that walks through each of our content areas. One will be reviewing that at each level and who will be doing that work. And then just a note that in the end, the teachers and principals take the data really seriously. And I know I've said this before, but I can think of even just 2 teachers at Fitcher Mitchell who asked for a sub each recently because they wanted to dive really deep into the math data and print all the students who performed under state expectations and come up with a plan for them for next year with students they didn't even have yet. So that's just one small example of the kind of work that's taking place every day. In terms of looking at why some of the averages are below and thinking about looking at Fitcher Mitchell specifically, the scores of students with disabilities and those receiving free and reduced lunch are disproportionately lower as they are across the state. And so we've already, and the country, I'm sure many of you have heard of the achievement gap. It's a real thing. We see it in our district. And we've begun to talk about how to restructure things there, services we provide for students. And that's actually one of the reasons why at Dyke Newell and Fitcher Mitchell, the idea for the interventionist positions came about, is wanting to address the behavior and the academic components and really getting students, whether they have special education needs or not, more of the individual support and teaching time that's one-on-one with someone who can specialize in that with them, rather than then just getting farther and farther behind. So that's one of the goals there. Obviously, you know that we are also purchasing a reading program that told us about $160,000 that's in the budget for next year. And the professional development accompanying that hopefully will help increase how we're doing on assessments across all of our grades and all of our schools, as the guided reading we've been doing has been sort of more piecemeal and school-based, and this will be a much more consistent sort of strategic way to go about teaching reading to all of our students, which will impact their achievement. And then the math component is something that, just like I have had an ELA committee for the past year, math committee will be starting next year to take a look at our programs for that. That's it. Questions?
Wasn't there at one point, I thought, there was a possibility of some additional state funding and a
Yes, they're still
consultant?
waiting. The folks at the Department of Education are still waiting to get their full application approved for all of that funding coming from the Fed. So we should be receiving something, and the last time we checked in with them, they were hoping to give us a number by August, which would also include a coach that would be working with Fitcher Mitchell. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Katie.
Other questions?
Yeah, any questions?
No, that's great.
No.
Thank you.
I do want you to go back, if you don't mind, to, you don't have to go back through the charts, but you mentioned the two deans of students
Yes.
that were created. How does, do they have a clear set of responsibilities as it relates to behavioral
Yes.
concerns, or are they more administrative? I'm just trying
If you were to look at the job descriptions we wrote for them that were passed, that we used last year, It's essentially almost like having an assistant principal, where they're responsible for, some of the work when behavior issues come up. They're also responsible for doing preventative work around culture in the buildings. And so essentially, if you think of traditionally what an assistant principal would do, that's the essence of their job as well.
Okay. So as our use of these two positions, the individuals in these two positions, sort of matures over time, because is this the first or second year?
This is the first year.
We should see maybe a little bit more impact of those two jobs on dealing with behavioral concerns in the schools, do you think? Or I guess my question is, you add a position, and it might take a year for that position to sort of settle into the flow of what's going on in the building.
Right. So I'll give you an example, because I think it's two parts. That yes, we absolutely can look at how behavior has changed with the position. I think the second part is what is the principal now able to get done? Because part of the vision wasn't just to add the position to fix behavior. It was to add the position to fix behavior, but then to also ensure that the principal's time, while they're still always going to be involved in behavior somehow, is somewhat protected so they can be the instructional leader. So Brandon, for instance, here has to observe every teacher 5 times in a year. That was really a struggle previous to having a full-time dean of students for him to be able to do just something like that. That is a requirement of his job because of the behavior pieces coming up throughout the day like they would at any middle school. So it was kind of a twofold purpose.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Thank you, Katie.
Sure.
I'll just put you on notice that if the board is agreeable to do more public workshops in the next school year, it's presentations like this and discussions like this that we hope we can bring to the public and get a good dialogue going. So this is great for us, but I think it'd be great for others to hear as well.
Yeah, I look forward to that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments, discussion?
Great job, thank you.
Okay, thanks,
Very
Katie.
comprehensive.
Okay. Item 12.2, review of our 2018-19 goals. I'm not going to do this in any great detail, but it does seem we had laid out 4 goals related to the building, related to communications, RTI, and Schedule B, and I think we've addressed all those issues as we've finished out the year. A couple of policy issues. These are 12.3, second reading, board policy IKF, graduation requirements, and this is an action item. So move approval, Mr. Chairman. We have a motion by Bill, second by Lou. Any discussion? No? All in favor? Any opposed? No? Thank you. And item 12.4, second reading of board policy IKA, grading system. And again, this is an action item. So do I have a motion to adopt?
Move to adopt.
A motion by Lou, second by Bill. Any discussion? If not, all in favor? Any opposed? No, thank you. Okay, under new business, 13.1, personnel. Patrick?
First item is just a retirement. Pam Provost, secretary at BRCTC, retired recently, and I'd like to thank her for 25 years of service. And then we have one resignation, Mara Cruz, who's a special ed teacher at Woolwich Central School, and I'd like to thank her for 18 years of service to the district. I would say that on the last day, I think it was last Friday at our luncheon, we had 11 retirees that represented 270 years of service to the district, which was impressive. Do you want me to move right into nomination?
Yeah, go ahead. I'll just reflect that the RSU seems to hold on to good experienced teachers for a long time, so that's good for the district, so.
So I'll just go through the 4 nominations that we have, and you can choose if you'd like to take them individually or, you know, as a group at the end. But science teacher at Bath Middle School, we're nominating Micah Depper. We had 10 applications. We interviewed 1 person, and we had 2 administrators and 5 teachers on the committee. And Mr. Depper is coming from Harpswell Coastal Academy. For a special education teacher at M.R.S.A, I'd like to nominate Nancy Riggs. We had 4 applications, interviewed 2, and we had 2 administrators and 2 teachers. And Nancy is actually here tonight in the back of the room, and we're excited to welcome her back to RSU1. ELL teacher, we had 8 applications, which we were impressed with, surprised by, I think, a little bit. We interviewed 3, and we're nominating Sarah Gagnon, who is currently doing that job in Lewiston. And we had 3 administrators and 2 teachers on that committee. And lastly, we have a social studies teacher at Morse High School, and we're pleased to nominate John Dever. And high school social studies tends to be a very popular position. We had 30 applications. We interviewed 5 people. We had 2 administrators and 5 teachers on the committee. And Mr. Dever, who was here tonight, we convinced him to go home and enjoy the evening because it was so nice out that he didn't have to be here. But he's been 19 years recently at Mount Ararat High School teaching social studies.
Thanks, Patrick. So let's do we take a? Yeah, let's take them as a group. Is that all right? Okay.
Yep.
So do I have a motion?
Motion to accept.
Motion by Lou, second by Megan. All in favor? Any opposed? No? Okay. And Patrick, do you have, can you just give us an idea of what remains out there to be filled?
We have special education at Woolwich still to be filled. We have a couple ed techs. Help me out, Vita. Middle school, we may have a math position open here at BMS. Health, we have at BMS, and foreign language at the middle school level. So those are the big ones right now that are out there.
Anyone that gives you any particular worry? Or?
I think health and foreign language, you know, will be tough to find.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Patrick. So we have 13.1D. We have a request from a teacher for a leave of absence, and I'll let Patrick. That should have been on your desk or in front of you when you sat down. This is an action item, so Patrick, do you want to comment on this?
Yeah, Ashley is, again, requesting 1-year leave of absence. He's a kindergarten teacher at Dyke Newell School, and Jen is, you know, supporting this, recommending that we support this, and I do as well, so.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Motion to accept.
Motion by Lou, second by Bill. Any discussion on this? It is not usual that we grant leaves of absence, or do we do it? We do about 1 a year, it seems.
Yeah, maybe less than that. I mean, we don't have a lot. You know, back when I first started here, we gave somebody 3 years in a row, which was, you know, kind of unheard of, but we did that, and it worked out well for us. But, yeah, we don't have that many.
Okay. Any discussion, comments? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? No, thank you. Okay. Item 14.0, we have to approve the computation of declaration of votes of the June 11th, 2019 budget referendum, and that's an action item. Do we have specific language for that, or do you have? No. Okay, so I need a motion for this, and I guess it could read just like that.
Just to approve the, I'll move to approve the computation of declaration of votes.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Lou, second by Alan. All in favor? Any opposed? No, thank you. 15.0, we have our annual approval of the superintendent's contract for 2019-20 through 2020. Again, this is an action item. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
Motion by Lou, second. Second by Megan. All in favor? Any opposed? No, thank you. 16.0, Dean. Authorized lease purchase of photocopies. Doesn't get much more exciting than this, huh?
Okay, so we recently went through RFP process in order for us to select copier and printer support for the next 5-year cycle. In that, we sent out our request for proposals. We had 5 bidders come back with 6 proposals, and through that process, we selected a company called A-Copy. They're primarily based out of Gardner and Portland. The new system, the new fleet, will basically replace all of our copiers. It will also replace excuse me, most of the printers that we have. We'll be cutting down on the actual total number of units and going to faster, more capable multi-function units. So they'll be less expensive for us to run in the long term over the course of the contract. We're going to be using something called Find Me or Follow Me Printing. And basically what happens with that is the staff or students send a print job to a print queue. They'll actually only have 1 or 2 printers that actually show up when they go to select a printer. So very little confusion there. And they will walk up to any copier in the building, or any building for that matter. Staff will have a badge, and they will simply pass the badge over the sensor in front of the unit. It'll pop up with whatever jobs they have available, and they can select and output them. So what that does is it means that they don't have to have printers installed, and it eliminates any confidentiality issues that we typically have, where someone outputs a print job to a printer and then it sits there until they get to pick it up. And sometimes it then gets picked up by someone else. Other things that typically happen is that, you know, a secretary might be trying to output labels or envelopes, and somebody else sends a print job, and it ends up mixed with what they're doing. So this eliminates that. It eliminates waste. We have a surprising number of jobs that get printed that never get picked up because people sent them to the wrong printer without meaning to. They just didn't, you know, pay attention. And so this eliminates all of that. I mean, you literally, your print job just sits in this queue until you walk over, you swipe your badge. For students, you can type in a PIN. If a staff person forgets their badge, they can just use a PIN as well. So it should be quick, easy, efficient. It's in other schools working successfully currently. So we're actually really pleased with that. I think we'll be able to add new functionality, improved efficiencies, and we anticipate our savings will be significant. I mean, we're looking at a savings of roughly $20,000 a year over the 5-year contract.
What's the savings attributed to?
2 things.
Paper costs, or?
No, this contract doesn't actually include paper, but our cost per page is dropping. Color copies will be 0.035 cents per page, down from 0.04214. The black color copies are going down to 0.0029, down from 0.00424. So, you know, our cost per page is dropping significantly. and we'll have much less wastage. So, and the new system will allow us to generate reports by user, by school, by group. I mean, we'll be able to really delve into where our printing expense is.
Any questions of Dean? This is an action item. How does a student, I mean, there isn't a printer in every classroom, obviously, right?
That is correct.
So how does a student access the printers? Where are they centrally located, or? And I
Yes.
guess that would even apply to now. I'm just not.
Yeah,
I'm not
typically we have
familiar.
certain units that are designated as available for student use. And in the future, as we move forward with this, there'd be very few that wouldn't be available for student use, just the ones that are basically in staff rooms or enclosed spaces. So the library typically has a unit that's available. Here, I think the main office is available for student use. And we'll meet with each school basically to identify which units would be available for students to use. But there's nothing in the system, you know, I mean, they could print to any unit, potentially. They just walk up to it, input their PIN number, and their print jobs will appear, and they can output them.
Okay. Okay. Any questions of Dean? No? Thanks for doing all the research on this. So we need a motion to authorize the lease purchase.
Do we need to read the motion that's on?
No, just the top part is fine.
Oh, it's all right, just,
Yeah.
no, we don't have to. So I'll just move that we pass this resolution for the photocopiers.
Okay. Have a motion by Lou. Second? Second by Bill. All in favor? Any opposed? No? Okay, thanks. Thanks, Dean. Okay, 17.0, again, we do this every year at our last meeting before the summer, which is to give Patrick the authority, authorization to hire on the board's behalf. It's been his practice, and I think he's stuck to it, which I appreciate, which is to notify us of the candidates and when he takes the action. So I'm sure he will agree to do that again. So do I have a motion to authorize the superintendent to hire staff over the summer on our behalf?
So moved. I'll second.
Okay, got a motion by Bill, second by Lou. All in favor? Any opposed? No? Okay, thank you. 18.0, we have our second public session. Anyone who has any comments they want to share with the board? If not, no, thank you. 19.0, next meeting dates and locations. So we are taking July off. We will meet the end of August, the fourth Monday in August. I would recommend or propose that the meeting be held here at Bath Middle School, which I guess it typically is, right? Sometimes, maybe not. But that we meet here at Bath Middle School and see whether or not that fits our,
So that's the 26th?
Yes.
the 26th of August. Okay? I don't think we need to take action on that. All right, so, item 20. Do I have a motion? A motion to adjourn. A motion by Alan, second by Anita. All in favor? Any opposed? No? Thank you. Thanks.